In a very interesting section this morning, we've titled it Love Gone Wrong. Love Gone Wrong. So over the last 2 weeks, we've been talking about dating, and then last Sunday we spoke on marriage, and that's if you want to pursue that for your life. We've said throughout, not everybody is called to marriage, not everyone wants to be married, but if you do want to be married, the dating sermon and last week's sermon on being married are great resources for you. So I trust that you've been receiving God's wisdom in your life and that you are being changed and challenged. If I look around the room, I think most of us would say that we all want our love to last long. In other words, if we are married or planning to be married, we want to be happily married forever after, right? That is our desire. And so here at TNC, if you look around the room, we've got couples who've gone beyond the 30-year mark in marriage. Some have gone beyond the 45-year mark in marriage. Bless God. Some of you, guys, bless God. We also know of grandparents, family, friends, and relatives who've been married for a very, 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 very long time. So by these accounts, we all know that being married for long is possible. It's possible. Especially in a time and a culture when people don't stay married for long. In fact, in church circles, we tell you that if you marry a Proverbs 31 woman or a Proverbs man, chapters 1 to 30, you are bound to be happily married forever. You can't fail because nothing is going to go wrong here. You see, Miss Proverbs 31 and Mr. Proverbs 1 to 30, they are the perfect Instagram couple. So I want us just to take a peek at that page. Proverbs 31, starting from verse 10. A competent wife, how does one find her? Her value is far above pearls. Her husband entrusts his heart to her, and with her he will have all he needs. She brings him good and not trouble all the days of her life. She seeks out wool and flax. She works joyfully with her hands. She is like a fleet of merchant ships bringing food from a distance. She gets up while it is still night, even in winter, providing food for her household, even some for her female servants. She surveys a field and acquires it. From her own resources, she plants a vineyard. She works energetically. Her arms are powerful. She realized that her trading is successful. She doesn't put out her lamp at night. This is Mpo's wife, Naledi. She's perfect. She's the kind of woman every man would want to be with. As we know, the book of Proverbs is written to Mpo, a boy, and so we would expect that he has a similar kind of character. And so throughout the Proverbs, we read about his character. Proverbs 11 and 5, it says, moral character makes for smooth traveling. An evil life is a hard life. Good character is the best insurance. Crooks get trapped in their sinful lust. So he's got a solid character. He's got work ethic. Proverbs 14 and 23. There is profit in all hard work, but endless talk only leads to poverty. Mpo loves God. Proverbs 1 and 7. Wisdom begins with the fear of the Lord, but fools despise wisdom and instruction. And finally, he doesn't just love God, he also loves people. Proverbs 14 and 21. It's criminal to ignore a neighbor in need, but compassion for the poor, what a blessing. Mpo is also quite a catch. You can just imagine this couple posing in their wedded bliss. And so even as we look at this picture-perfect couple, we realize that not all love stories are like theirs. Not all love stories end as well as they start, nor do they end happily ever after. As we said earlier, we live in a time where divorce is on the rise. Nowadays, couples struggle to get to year 3. And traditionally people say you should start feeling the itch only after year 7. But people today can't stand each other just after 36 months. That's shorter than a car payment. And so because of issues like that in our culture, today we'll be talking about love gone wrong. And so I want to remind you that we're confining ourselves to the book of Proverbs, right? Therefore, there are certain things that are in your marriage that we will not touch on because they aren't addressed here. But as we said a bit earlier, we are more than happy for you to come and chat with us so we can journey together as it pertains to your specific marriage. This is what church family is here for. We must also remember that the Proverbs are not promises that we can just read and confess and hope to get mpo on a lady as our spouse. No, they are godly guides for us to live the way God wants us to live. However, as sometimes foolish people, we are bound to reflect foolishness in our marriages. And so as we talk about foolishness in marriage, I first want to address what men might be looking for in marriage, then what women will be expecting or do expect in marriage. And then we'll dive into how when we don't meet those expectations or those needs, love goes wrong. And so I'm going to generalize right now, right? So if you're a guy and you're not here, it's all good. If you're a lady and you're not here, that's fine. Firstly, men. Men would say the following: women don't understand the weight of being a man. There's so much that is expected of you as a man. You are called to be a provider and a protector all at the same time. And nowadays this happens in the system when men are being pushed to the background. We hear things like, hey, who needs a man? At the same time, society doesn't acknowledge that men have feelings. If we show emotion, we're told that we're weak. But when we display strength, we're told that it's toxic masculinity. Men's desire is to come home to a safe place where they can be heard and lay down their heads. A place where they're respected and loved. A place where they're appreciated regardless of what the world thinks of them. That's what men expect in marriage. Now into what women need. Women also want to be loved, respected, and heard. They want a man who understands their feelings and trust their female intuition. They want a man who will be faithful and nurturing through the difficult seasons of life. A man who will provide protection for them, that you will stand up for me. You will back me up when I need you to. Women are looking for a man who's mature enough to realize that she's not a trophy to be prized, or a servant who just meets the needs of others, but that she's a life partner that you choose to live life freely with. So, men and women come into marriage having certain desires, needs, and expectations. But what happens when these expectations aren't met? What happens when those desires are ignored? Invariably, love goes wrong. So that's what we are going to do this morning. Focus on the issues that lead to love going wrong. In as much as we said that the Proverbs aren't promises, we need to remind ourselves that the Proverbs are also observations. Solomon and the other writers look outside and they see what is happening in society and they go, that's foolish, that's wise, don't do this, do that. And following in that state, that's all I'll be doing this morning. I'm not here to resolve any of your issues. I'm here to make observations. Proverbs 7:6 says, as I stood at the window of my house, looking out through the shutters, watching the mindless crowd stroll by, I spotted a couple without sense. And so because we're talking about foolish people this morning, let's be clear, I'm not talking about anyone in here, right? I am not mentioning anyone in here. My commentary from observing people is all about your neighbors, your friends, and your colleagues. So don't come to me afterwards. I'm not talking about you. So my first observation on how love goes wrong is communication. Communication is vital in marriage. It's vital. Proverbs 21:9 says this: better to live on the corner of a roof than to share a house with a nagging wife. Proverbs 21:19, better to live in the wilderness than with a nagging and hot-tempered wife. Proverbs 25:16, an endless dripping on a rainy day and a nagging wife are alike. The one who controls her controls the wind and grasps oil with his right hand. Sure. Ish. Do you know that many husbands would say that if their wives stopped nagging, their marriages would be so much better? And if you were to read the Proverbs, there are about 5 different places where a nagging wife is mentioned. So that shows us even the biblical writers agree. Stop nagging. It's not uncommon when shooting the breeze with the guys, and one of the guys will start and say, hey, gents, my wife is a nag, you know. If it's not this, it's that. And then as we go around the fire, each guy begins to speak about his own wife and how she nags him. And all around the fire, everybody's complaining about nag. Nagging is as old as marriage itself. From the days of Eve nagging Adam about eating the forbidden fruit, to your neighbor nagging her husband about fill in the blank. Nagging is a consistent complaining about this or that, or in modern times we could say it is micromanaging. Somebody says to you, please pick up your clothes from the floor. Then 10 minutes later, they are still there. Didn't you say you're going to pick them up? Another 10 minutes goes by. Did you remove your clothes from the floor? And so we all know nagging goes from small to big things, right? And so perhaps if you are nagged this morning, your nagging goes with cutting language and exaggerations. You say things like, you always leave your clothes on the floor. You never do this or that. Nagging. But if we were to go back to verses 21 and 9 and 21 and 19, let's look at the husband's response. He says he'd rather be on the roof or in the wilderness than listen to his wife. Could it be that she's not nagging him for nothing? Could it be that he's the kind of guy who does not want to listen to her anyways? Even when she raises valid concerns. You know that kind of a guy who will say, I'll do it, just to shut her up. The guy who will raise his voice, which signals, leave me alone. Another way to disrupt communication is to check out as she's talking. And you know what they do in cartoons? That's all you see. You've checked out. Oh, and then there's the quintessential gaslighter. The man who puts things in such a way that you begin to doubt yourself. And you start thinking to yourself, am I wrong for asking these questions about our marriage? Am I wrong for asking these questions about our life together? And then as you're thinking about that, he gives you the silent treatment until you apologize. Mr. Gaslighter. As I was on my journey of observations, I happened to get on the interwebs, and I read this following story, which speaks to this point and our next point. And so a certain young lady writes on Reddit seeking marital advice. She's been married to her husband for 10 years, and they've got 2 boys, an 8-year-old and a 6-year-old. And so for Mother's Day, she wanted to just relax. I don't want dinners, I don't want parties, just relax. Give me a free day. So she asked her husband, can you take the kids and go out with them so I can have time to myself? Instead, her husband got her and the kids tickets to go out to a fun day, while he stayed at home and played video games. Nevertheless, she had fun with the kids, but she was upset that her husband didn't give her what she asked for. So for Father's Day, her husband asked her, "Hey, I'd also want to have a free day. Can you take the kids and go away? That would be my Father's Day present." Instead, she got him and the kids cards for an arcade place an hour away from home. She was even kind enough to buy them tons of tokens. So on Saturday night before Father's Day, she says, "Honey, I've bought these tokens and tickets. You guys go and have fun." And so on Sunday morning, he took the boys and went. And so subsequently, she got her free day. And he had fun with the kids. But after the kids were put to bed, the couple got into a fight. Because the dude was angry that his wife ignored what he wanted for Father's Day. So now he was giving her the silent treatment and refusing to accept her apologies. But I said the story also touches on our second point. Let's move on. Proverbs 20:3. It is honorable to back off from a fight, but fools jump right in. We're speaking about compromise. The writer here tells us that when faced with a tough situation, a wise person looks to diffuse it. But fools don't think. They jump right in. In most cases in marriage, backing down means that we must reach compromise. But in this story that we've just read, we said that the husband had no desire to meet his wife halfway. He didn't want to compromise. Couples that choose not to compromise wreak havoc on their marriages. Proverbs 38, selfish people cause trouble, but you will live a full life if you trust the Lord. Only fools trust what they alone think. But if you live by wisdom, you will do all right. You see, husbands who don't compromise are fools because they always want their own way. You see, these are the kind of people who insist on spending money that the couple doesn't have to meet their own desires. They keep on telling you things like, "Nah, I need a break. I work so hard, I deserve this. I don't care what you think. Nah. I'm focusing on me." In some instances, not backing down means you insist on cooking the kinds of foods that your husband or wife doesn't like. You're like, "Nna ke di rata." If you hate it, bro, cook your own food. Couples who refuse to compromise also tend to be bad at communication. And this leads to even more trouble. I want to remind you that I'm just making observations. It's not for me to solve your problems. Just for us to see. But even as I said, I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about those out there. Our next observation in how love goes wrong is in the area of contribution. Proverbs 11:25. A generous person will be enriched, and the one who gives a drink of water will receive water. This verse speaks about someone with a helping spirit and how that makes room for others to help you. Picture this. A young couple is excited, the kind of couple that Wilson spoke about. They are on their way to getting married. They're in love, and so one day she invites her boyfriend to come over for dinner, and so after this scrumptious dinner, that together in the kitchen cleaning up, and so then he turns to her and he says, "You know, after we're married and we have kids, my kids must never see me doing this." She says, what do you mean? This thing of washing dishes, this is woman's work. My kids must never see me do this. Ladies, how many of you would be happy with such a comment? Nervous laughter. Most guys who moan about their wives nagging is because of their lack of contribution in domestic affairs in the home. You hear these guys say, she's always telling me to look after the kids and to clean up there and to do this or that. She just is on my case all the time. She tells me about the light bulb that needs to be changed. No, I work hard. Can't she just hire somebody to fix the light bulb? We make enough money for us to have a nanny to look after those kids. Why me? I need a break. Here's the thing. Here's the thing, friends. This leads to fights to and fro. It leads to passive-aggressive behavior. Or because a brother that doesn't want to help at home. And in some cases, the husband gets home one day and the wife's bags are packed. And she says, I'm leaving you. Then he says, how? What do you mean? I thought we were happy. Yes, you were happy because you were not contributing. She's tired. You were part of making the babies, but you didn't want to participate in looking after them. And then, like some men, you have the audacity to criticize the decisions that she makes about the children. Why are they going to this school? Why are their grades so bad? Why aren't there any sports at the school? But you never bothered to go and visit the schools with her in the first place. All you said to her was that, just tell me how much the fees are. I don't care about anything else. Gents, please square me up here. If putting pans on the stove is too much for you, because it's woman's work, why do you expect your wife to do woman's work, but still go out the next day to do men's work of providing? Why can't you do it all by yourself? But Tumi, Joburg is expensive. So it's okay for her to do woman's work of cooking and doing kids and still do men's work. How does that make sense? No wonder she nags. She's doing everything. No wonder she's always making comments while you sit and play video games or watch super sport. Asikho lapho. Because on the flip side, could it be that your husband is not contributing because you nag him about his effort? You know, always telling him that what he's doing is not right. Don't hold the baby like that. The way the kids are dressed, they look like they're going to the circus. This food is bad. Do you think this is tidying up? I might just do it myself. Sometimes nagging is what makes people not contribute. Friends, in as much as money is needed to run the home, your contribution is just as important. And this is a perfect segue to our next pair of foolish actions that lead to love going wrong. Number 4, cash. As a pastor in Joburg, I've noticed one thing, and that is the more cash a couple makes, the higher the probability of their love going wrong. The more cash a couple makes, the higher the probability of their love going wrong. Now, don't stone me. I'm not saying stay poor. I'm not saying stay where you are. Don't misunderstand me. I'm also not saying that poorer couples don't fight about money. But in my observations, it seems that more money, more problems. And this brings us to another story. An American writer writes about the time when his grandparents won the lotto. I've put this story on the screen behind me so you can follow. My grandparents had driven up from California the evening before. Stopping at a gas station, they purchased some snacks, gas, and as they often did, a lottery ticket. At the hotel that night, Grandpa stayed up to watch the news. The lottery numbers were to be announced. As the numbers were picked from a whirling globe of balls, the first number matched, and the second number, then the third. At this point, he shakes Grandma awake. She wipes her eyes as they watch the fourth, the fifth, sixth, and seventh numbers match. All 7 numbers, jaws dropped. Their minds could not ascertain what had transpired in just a few seconds. Unimaginable, unthinkable. That night, Grandma and Grandpa won $4.6 million. That is 82 million rand by this week's exchange rate. 82. Jess. The winnings helped our family in profound ways. Debts were paid, vacations were had, tuitions were covered. Aye, Bazalwan, I think some of you must pray for the lotto numbers this week. Jesus. Rabba, sa, sa, oh. Think about it. They paid tuition forever. This family was changed generationally. You don't have faith for that, no? It's okay. Interestingly, the story doesn't end there. The writer continues. But the story has a dark side. A profound gift that created momentary bliss eventually led to bickering, infighting, and anger in the family. Listen closely. After nearly 50 years of marriage, Grandma and Grandpa's marriage ended. After nearly 50 years of marriage, Grandma and Grandpa's marriage ended. See, friends, money might seem like safety, but it has a dark side to it. Proverbs 18:11 says, "The rich think of their wealth as a strong defense. They imagine it to be a high wall of safety." You see, when we think of ourselves as rich, we tend to behave like we have no need of anyone else, including our spouses. After all, money is where I put my trust. And we see this all the time here in Joburg. The more money a husband or wife makes, it quickly leads to them being puffed up. All of a sudden, that once humble husband of yours is now an arrogant acquirer of things. He doesn't even consult you anymore. You used to do a budget together. Now he just buys without you being there. And then you walk in the, how? When did you get this? I leave my things. Yes, he ignores you. The very person who was with him when he couldn't get a job. The person that he would pour his heart out because his boss frustrated him. You are now not even spoken to. You are now an afterthought because money is his new mistress. See, when it comes to cash, we want to put ourselves ahead. It could be that your wife took time off work to have your children. And so now she's not making as much money as she could have had she not had kids. And you're pushing your weight around because I make the money here. So I must get things first. But this is not just a guy thing. This goes both ways. Because in South Africa, we know that young professional black women are in demand. So as you begin climbing the corporate ladder, hubby stays stuck in some middle management or clerical position, so you start to belittle him, saying things like, I don't need a man. I don't need a man to make my life work because Pelana, I can afford myself. I must look good for the world out there. Now that you got the bag, you think yourself too important to meet your husband's needs. There's a popular proverb that we all know that says, a fool and his money are soon parted, right? I would say in Joburg, a fool with money is soon parted from their partner. A fool with money is soon parted from their partner. Let me jump on to my final observation. Cheating. A 50-year marriage, as we just read, breaks down because of cash. Though the writer never tells us exactly what happened, we know what happens here in Jozi. A dude finds riches, and then he begins to look around at all the Instagram model wannabes who smile and wink at him at the mall. Next thing you know, he's hanging out at clubs on Friday nights and going away on weekend retreats. He's become the quintessential blesser. All the while, wife and kids are at home. Cheating is a fast way to break a marriage. And as I said earlier, it's on the rise. We could say, marry people by jola. Nowadays, statements such as "Munna ke selepo wa kadimisana" are pretty acceptable. You get it, ne? Now that you have money, there are two budgets. One for the family, the other one for mamncane. As I have conversations with young men, I'm being told more and more that they don't want their wives to know how much they earn. And I ponder and say, why? Hey, this will curtail what my mamncane gets. So I hide my salary from my wife so I can do this as well. I'm paying for the house, paying for the cars, paying for the school fees. So it doesn't matter what I do with the rest. So essentially what you're saying is that the woman who carried your children, the woman who's struggling to lose weight because of you, is no longer attractive anymore. It's no longer worth your time. All because you found some cash. So now you're cheating. Mind you, it's not just men who cheat. Women are meeting buff guys at the gym. At the gym and at their running clubs, because that's the new thing now. People are running everywhere. And so they are meeting men who are sexy and fit, unlike their COVID-bodied husbands. As someone just said recently, going to the gym these days is like going from the frying pan into the fire. Proverbs 6:26 says, "For you can buy a harlot with a loaf of bread, but sex with another man's wife or another woman's husband will cost you your life." Can you carry fire right next to your body and keep your clothes from burning? It's not that cheating with a prostitute is better, and today you can include pornography in this area. It's not that that's better. All cheating isn't good. But at least he says, if you're a prostitute, you will stay alive. Cheating with someone else's spouse will destroy you. It will destroy you financially and maybe even end your life. Question is that work husband, that work wife, worth it? Are they really worth you losing everything? So as I conclude, I want us to go to Proverbs 14:1. A wise woman strengthens her family, but a foolish woman destroys hers by what she does. Friends, if you are engaging in any of the behavior that we've observed this morning, you're going a collision course. Your love will go wrong. Guaranteed. A foolish person only thinks of themselves and what they can get in a relationship. It's about me, 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 me. And that attitude destroys. So we often say it takes two people to make a marriage work. Two people who want to walk in wisdom through the good times and the bad times to make a marriage work. But it takes one fool to break up a marriage. So in the book of Proverbs, we read about a lot of ways that we can have foolish marriages, or we can be foolish in marriage. But the Proverbs are also loaded with wisdom on how we can have good marriages. We saw that in Wilson's sermon last Sunday. And ultimately, Jesus is our ultimate wisdom. And in order for your love to go right, you need to be found in Him. The writer of Hebrews in 4:7 says, "Today, if you hear His voice, do not harden your hearts." So wherever your marriage is, even if it's in a good place, I would say to you, yield yourself to the wisdom that Jesus provides. Surrender your marriage to Him. And if you're in a bad place, if you've messed up, come to Jesus. Because He's also paid the penalty for your sin. And because He's done that, He says you can come to the throne room and obtain mercy. I love what Hebrews 4:16 says. "Therefore let us approach the throne of grace with boldness, so we may receive mercy and find grace to help us in time of need." That's what you need, Jesus. In the midst of love going wrong, not more money, not more time, Jesus. So turn to Him and find help, find grace right where you are. Because the truth is, we won't always get marriage right. But what we know is that we will always find the grace of Jesus to help us. And the love of the community of faith to help us in the journey in how we can love each other wisely. So here's my invitation to those of you who are married, and even those who desire to be married. Be open here. Share your struggles, share your pain. And as a faith family, we can journey and walk with you toward healing, restoration, up to a point where you can both walk in the wisdom that God has provided in His Word. So that love gone wrong will become love gone right.